Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's live lesson for the members, the GL Academy. Today we're going to be talking about fretboard layout, learning the notes on the fretboard, things like that. And in case you guys haven't heard, we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of doing two broadcasts, one for you guys and then one later, we're just going to have one broadcast, and there's going to be some people over on YouTube who can kind of see it for free, but only you guys can interact with us and stuff like that, ask questions. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot to go over today. I'm not sure that I'll get to everything in the PDF, which you can download.
Yes.
Below, by the way.
Yeah.
And if you're in the public, they just go to guitarlessons.com/live for the PDF.
Yep.
Is that the way it works?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to cover notes on the fretboard, learning them, getting them memorized chords where you don't even have to think about it. We're going to go over octave centers a little bit. And if we have time, we're going to hit on the cage sequence and the 3-note per string system for navigating the fretboard with leads and things like that.
Before we jump into this, is any of this stuff covered in a series already that's on the site?
I believe we have like fretboard layout 1, 2, and 3 in the guitarlessons.com Academy is done. They're all done, which means, memorizing all the notes on the fretboard is done. Octave centers are covered there too, the simple octave centers. There are more octave centers that you need to learn on the fretboard, but the simple ones that we're going to go over in this lesson are in, I believe, fretboard layout 1. Okay. The cage sequence and, let's just go with that. The cage sequence is not covered yet because I'm going to have a very exhaustive entire lesson plan based around that. It's going to be probably at least 5 or 6 series.
Cool.
But we haven't started that yet. There are some other resources on just regular guitarlessons.com, the non-members area for that. And then the 3-note per string system for navigating the fretboard, we're kind of covering as we go through major scales, minor scales, and other modal scales too. So we've kind of started on that.
Okay, cool. Well, guys, there's the questions down below for all the members. If you guys want to ask a question, questions tab, send in your questions. Hopefully we'll get to them later. Well, we'll definitely have time to get to questions.
Yeah, for sure.
That's always important. If it's about learning the notes, things like that, awesome. If it's about something else, we'll answer it anyway.
Great.
That's great. So before we do all that fun stuff, teaching stuff, we're going to play a song. It is Minor Education.
Minor Education is the title of the song series.
Yeah.
In the members area.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just playing kind of a condensed version of it, and we're just going to improvise over it.
It's in C minor. The A section is nothing but C minor groove, and then it goes to what would be essentially kind of like a minor blues for the A section.
It's like a 1-4-5 kind of thing, right? Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's very Pink Floyd-y.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's based on. So.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and channel my inner David Gilmour.
Who just turned 71 day before yesterday or something like that, I think.
Really?
I don't remember. That's what I heard on the radio. Wow. And I was like, yes.
Wow.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Are you going to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay. Ooh, the fade out.
Moody.
Very.
That's a great song for working on just minor scales and applying some of the things we're going to go over today as far as fretboard layout goes to minor scales, minor pentatonics, or just straight up natural minor scales too. So.
Cool. Well, let's jump right into the kind of teaching portion.
Okay.
If you want to?
I love sharing this story because, number one, I actually got to hang out with Joe Satriani at one of those camps you pay a ridiculous amount of money to go for and take master classes from him all week. It was really cool.
That's amazing.
Like one of the highlights of my musical life. And like one of the first things he said on one of his, the first full day of sessions was, if you don't have every note on the guitar neck memorized cold, then you're kidding yourself. And he just stopped and stared at us. I was like, okay, I guess I better take this seriously. Because I knew the names of the notes on the fretboard, but I was still like referencing them. So I didn't know that was an E. I was still referencing that to a D below it, and I'd be like, oh, that's an E, a step above, right? So what I did was I added to my practice time for, 6 months, 8 months, every day, 5 minutes that I practice, or almost every day, just going over the fretboard to memorize the notes and some of the ways and tips that I'm going to show you right now. And you're going to be surprised at how liberating this is for you once you take it on and start memorizing the notes really well. It seems like a lot of work, and it is, but it's going to free you up a lot. And it may seem like a huge task. I mean, if you want to pull this graphic up, Matt, look at all the notes on here. I mean, that looks like, oh, I may as well give up. I'm never going to learn. That was kind of my mentality before I started this. So I'm going to share some tips with you to make sure that you get these notes down, and that no matter what level of playing you're at, you can do this, and it's going to help you playing rhythm guitar, lead guitar, everything. So the the number one tip, or tip number one, is to take it easy and keep it simple. And by that I mean there's several things you can do in your daily practice time, because if you try to memorize the whole fretboard at once, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be like, I just can't do this. So number one thing you can do is keep it simple. And the first way you can do that is to take just one string at a time. Forget about everything else. Just, for example, focus on the low E string. E, F, G. And another way you can keep it simple is to work on just memorizing natural notes at first. So don't worry about sharps and flats at all at first. Just work on the natural notes on one string. E, F, third fret is a G, fifth fret is an A, seventh fret is a B, 8th fret is a C, 10th fret is a D, and when you get back to the 12th fret, and most guitars have fret markers on them with 2 dots or some other kind of distinguishing inlay to let you know that's an octave, you're back to where you started, that's an E. An octave above the open E string. So that's how I would start. I would take one string per week or one string per month and just work on that. Only do the natural notes at first, and only spend 3 to 5 minutes a day on this. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but when you do this over an extended amount of time, you're going to notice that, hey, I'm starting to memorize these notes. I can move on to the next string, and you can move on to doing the A string. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And I'm doing this quick, but the idea is just to get these tips in your head, and you can download the PDF, and when you work on this in your practice time, just go through these tips and remember them. The key is to be really consistent with your practices on this. So step number one, or tip number one, keep it really simple.
Nice.
Cool?
Yeah.
Let's see. Step number two is something that I hate doing. I hate singing when I play, but I do it anyways. I like singing, vocalizing when I play, and I hate saying note names out loud just because I'm a pretty quiet person, I guess. But saying the note names out loud as you try to memorize, or as you memorize the names of the notes on the fretboard, is a big deal because it gives you another way to remember them. It kind of internalizes them a lot better. So instead of just thinking to yourself, say those note names out loud and you will internalize it a lot faster. So E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. And that kind of leads me into tip number three, which is say the note names forwards and backwards. I'm still only sticking to the natural notes on the low E string, but you can apply this to every string, and even when you throw in the sharp and flat notes too. So do that same thing, say the notes out loud. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. And when you get up to the E, go back down the other way and say them backwards. E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. And one thing that'll help you be able to do this is to just work on saying the natural musical alphabet forwards and backwards. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. So You may be like, what did you just do? But literally write the musical alphabet down and then just say it backwards over and over again until you get used to that, and that'll make this a lot easier. So if you can even start on the highest note here, the E. E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. And that's going to help you a lot too.
Nice.
Cool. Shall I move on to tip 4?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
Wait, tip 3.
Tip 3. Oh, that was true. Tip 3.
Tip 4.
Tip 4. This one is really great to kind of confuse your brain and make it think in a different way, because you can fall into the routine and memorize this pretty quickly without having to think about it too much, to where you're on kind of autopilot, but you're not really thinking about the names of the notes. And that is to still stick with the natural notes, but this time we're going to skip natural notes. So if you have E, skip to G, then go to F, skip G and go to A, G, skip A and go to B, A, C, B, D, C, E. So when you do it like that, it really confuses your brain. You really have to think, okay, what is actually the name of that note on the 5th fret of the low E string? It's the A. So, and you can do the same thing descending too, backwards. So E, C, D, B, C, A, B, G, A, F, E. That's one really great way, or kind of the next level of making sure that you have whatever string you're working on down really well.
Nice.
Cool. Vertical memorization is tip number 6, and this is like the whole next level for memorizing the fretboard. Instead of going this way, you're just going to pick one fret, maybe 2 frets, depending on how comfortable you are with all the strings. And this is probably going to come into play after you've worked on all the strings, all 6 strings, like with the tips we've gone over here. But instead of going this way, you're going to go across the frets: F, B flat, or A sharp, E flat or D sharp, G sharp or A flat, C, F. And go back down the other way: F, C, A flat or G sharp, E flat, D sharp, B flat, A sharp, F. And you'll notice at first it's probably going to be really difficult. You're really going to have to put in some effort in thinking, what note is that? What is it? Okay. And then you're going to get a little bit better at the first fret, till the second fret, and then you're going to go through the exact same process. You're going to feel like, I don't know this at all. But once you go over that for a couple days or a couple weeks, you're going to be like, oh, I'm ready to throw in the 3rd fret. And you'll get to where, if you're consistent in this, you can do this all the way up and down the fretboard in a matter of just a couple minutes. And that is going to let you know if you know the fretboard really well or not. Cool.
Nice.
Was it 7th tip? 7th and final tip for memorizing the names of the notes on the fretboard is to do it or work on it when you're away from your guitar. Don't even have your guitar. It's going to force you to visualize things in your mind. And a lot of athletes, like basketball players, will visualize free throws and things like that. This is the same kind of deal. So if you can picture your fretboard in your head and just go over the names of the notes on a particular string, maybe the notes on a particular fret. I use this when I'm trying to fall asleep, if I'm having trouble sleeping, if I'm stuck in traffic, if I'm in a waiting room, anything like that. It's a great way to practice guitar and get a lot better at guitar without even having to touch your instrument. So,
that's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Cool.
That's really good.
But that's kind of ground level step 1 for getting to know fretboard layout on the guitar. And this is one way to attack it. There are people that I would say don't think about the notes on the fretboard, exactly what notes they're playing. They think more about intervals and things like that. But it's really useful, especially when you're playing with other people and they're like, okay, I want this voicing, or go to this key, and well, crap, I'm not used to playing an E flat. If you're dependent on that and you can't play by intervals, and you don't know where all your E flats are, you're gonna have a hard time. So knowing where all your E flats are, for example, is a great way to get started.
Yeah.
Memorizing the notes on the fretboard too.
Yeah. And all these tips are on the PDF.
Yep.
In case you guys haven't grabbed that yet, you can download the PDF.
That's why I keep looking down there. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Area number 2 of fretboard layout that I wanted to cover is just simply octave centers. And that's an easy way to explain octave centers is if you choose any note on the fretboard, an octave center is just where you would find that exact same note, 1 octave higher or lower. So this is a D note. And for any note that you play on the low E or A strings, if you go up 2 frets and over 2 strings, that is going to be the exact same note. So this is a D, 5th fret of the A string, up 2 frets, over 2 strings. It's the 7th fret of the G string, that's going to be a D as well, it's just 1 octave higher. So let's say you know a major scale. And you know that, hey, I'm playing a D note here on the A string. Any note up 2 frets and over 2 strings is another D. So I can play the same thing here. And that's really key in number one, getting to know the fretboard layout, the layout of your fretboard. So playing something in one area, and then playing it again here. But work on that. Grab any note on the low E string or on the A string. So for example, this F here, first fret of the low E, go up 2 frets over 2 strings, and that's going to be an F as well. And you can do that anywhere. So what is that? That is a C. If I go up 2 frets over 2 strings, that's going to be a C right there. And you can do that all day long. Here's another C, third fret of the A string, up 2 frets over 2 strings. And the same thing holds true for notes on the G and D strings, but the formula changes a little bit. Instead of going up just 2 frets, you need to go up 3 frets because of the way the guitar is tuned. So pick any note on the D or G strings. Let's do a random note. That's a G, 5th fret of the D string. You can go up 3 frets and over 2 strings. Those are both Gs. Now let's pick a note, let's just say B flat on the G string. Same thing if you go up 3 frets and over 2 strings. It's another B flat right there. And now, check it out. I can't get that to ring out, sorry. All of a sudden, if I start on this B flat here, first fret of the A string, up 2 frets over 2 strings, that's a B flat. And now I have that B flat on the G string, go up 3 frets over 2 strings. Now I have 3 B flats I can visualize. Which is great. What you're doing is you're kind of establishing home bases for improvising and creating chords and things like that, and being able to visualize the fretboard in chunks.
Nice.
Cool. Now, I don't know if, are people following along? Do we need to spend more time on this, or do we need to just kind of hit some more main areas like the cage system and the 3-note per string system?
I mean, right now, what I'm hearing, some of it's over. One of this G-Beans here is saying it's over my head, but I'm interested in getting there eventually.
Okay.
So it seems like you can move on if you want to.
Okay, cool.
Move on to something else. I mean, I think it's worth it. You put it in the archives and people can check it out later.
The cage system is something that's come up in the forums a couple of times, and we just haven't gotten to them yet. They are planned to be in the curriculum, and we're going to film series and all them and everything, like I said. But all the cage sequences, it's a series of open chord shapes up the neck that kind of connect the fretboard together. So basically, I'm taking my C shape, C major shape. Let me get some of this distortion off here so it's a little more easy to hear. C, A, G, E, and D, open chords, right? And I'm using those open chords to play the same chord all the way up the fretboard. And that may be confusing for you, but we're going to relate this back to bar chords because it's the easy way to kind of tie everything in together. I have my open C, right? And the shape that we associate with that chord is a C shape. But what if I want to play the next available C major chord up using common open chord shapes? I could use an A bar chord because that would be, so C major bar chord using an A shape. And if you know anything about bar chords, all you're doing is taking this open A major shape and moving it up to a B, and then one more half step to a C, and then putting your bar down as a kind of a movable nut. So B flat, B, C. It's a C chord, but you're using the A shape to make that chord. Now, the cage sequence is obviously a sequence of chords C, A, G, E, D. So we have C, then you have A. The next chord in the sequence is what? A G, right? C, A, G, E, D. So the next chord we need to worry about making is a C chord, but we're going to be using a G major shape. And this is where it gets a little weird if you haven't ever done this before. Most people don't make bar chords with this G major shape because it's a nightmare to make. But it's the same exact idea. All we're doing is taking a G major chord and moving it up and putting a bar down. So if I move that up 1/2 step, it'd be an A flat, then an A, then a B flat, then a B, and then a C. So I'm making a C chord, I'm just using the G major shape. And I'll connect all this once I go through all 5 chords, but the next chord is what? C, A, G, E. So we need to make a C major chord using an E shape. And this one's pretty common, it's just an E major bar chord shape. So if you know this bar chord shape, all you're doing is finding where you can play a C major chord using that bar chord shape. And it's the same thing, we're just taking an open E major chord, moving it up, and making a movable nut with our bar right there, right? Until we find a C, which is here on the 8th fret with our bar. Okay, the final shape in the sequence is a D chord, a D major shape. So what we have to do is do the same thing. Open D major chord, and then just find where that would be. We're still going to be kind of doing a bar chord thing, but we're not going to be making a bar. We're just going to grab this one note back here that would be an open string. So that's an E, F, F sharp, G, A, B flat, B, and finally, our C. All we're doing is making bar chords out of all of our open chords, that C, A, G, E, and D. So we've gone from C, C shape, A shape, G shape, E shape, D shape, and then it starts over, C shape. It's an open C major chord, 1 octave higher.
Nice.
Okay, now, if you're wondering, okay, how in the world do I connect these things? That was really fast, and it is really fast. What you do is you start with C in this case because that's our point of reference. We're making all C chords here using different shapes. You take the highest root note in that shape, which is here with your 3rd finger, and that becomes the lowest root note of the next chord in the sequence. So that's highest root note in the shape becomes the lowest root note of the next chord in the sequence. So from a C, this is our root note, move to an A bar chord shape, and our highest root note has become our lowest root note. Okay, now there's another root note here with my 3rd finger. That highest root note is going to become the lowest root note of the next shape, the G shape, which is right here. It's still there. And again, the highest root note, right, are both of these G's on the 8th fret, or sorry, C's on the 8th fret. Those highest root notes are going to become the lowest root notes of the next chord shape up, which is an E, still there. Next highest root note in this shape is my pinky right here. So that's going to become the lowest root note for my D shape. It's still all playing just C chords, but now instead of being stuck with just playing a C chord here or a C chord here, you have 5 different locations, actually 6, and you can keep going, right? All the way up the fretboard. So you have a lot of options, not only for rhythm guitar playing different voicings, but when you know the sequence and you can visualize it all the way up and down the fretboard, what happens is you automatically can see all of the chord tones for whatever chord you're working with. So if I can visualize all those, I can see all the important notes to play over a C major chord, which is really cool.
Yeah,
and that's where personal preference and like goals as far as what matters to you on your playing, whether it's lead or rhythm, comes into play. Like how much time do you want to spend working on either the rhythm aspect of this or the lead aspect of it. So
one thing I'll tell all the lead players, I'm the lead guitar player in my band. I spend 90%, probably more than 90% of my time playing rhythm guitar. So it's worth it to learn all your rhythm stuff too. Anyways.
Cool. And the cage sequence, if you're wondering, well, how does this help me? So if I'm playing maybe just a 1-4-5 in the key of C major, but I'm just bored of those voicings. Or if, Andrew's the other guitar player in the band, he's already doing that, what I can do just play the exact same thing and just use different voicings for it using just shapes either based on the C, A, G, E, or D. That was just based on a D shape. And then I think I was using the G shape there too, this one, but I was just playing the little top bit of it. And you can do that all the way up and down the fretboard, so. Combining all those different shapes, which is super handy.
I was just mentioning in chat before, I actually working on a song right now that actually uses that G shape.
Yep.
And it's just to get these certain notes in a certain order in the area that I'm in, and it works really well. I'll play it really quick. It's a very quick little verse part. And I'm gonna probably mess it up, but I'm gonna do my best. But basically I use this shape here, and then I use this, which is basically the G shape, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, and that, I just like that because instead of having to go, just an easier transition.
And a good exercise to do is to take a 1-4-5 progression in whatever key you're playing and see how many different ways you can play it. So if you had C, F, and G, right? To C, F, G, C, F, G, C, F, G. All the way down the fretboard. It was really cool.
Probably just overwhelmed half the people here.
Well, it's cool. It's something to shoot for. Yeah. I mean, all you would do is take, okay, I'm just going to work on my D shape today. How many places can I... So if I have a C, where am I going to play an F now? And this comes all back to knowing the names of the notes on the fretboard too. So if I know this is an F, I know that's a G. I have no trouble moving that shape around because there's my root note for my D shape. But that's I don't want to get too involved into that because I just want to kind of give you a taste. If you haven't gotten into the Cage sequence, I want to give you a taste of what you can expect to learn when we actually get those series out and give you something to work on right now. And if you've kind of heard about it and you've been working on it but you don't know how to apply it, don't know what it can really do for you, then I want to give you that perspective too.
Mm-hmm. And Cage, once you kind of get your head wrapped around it, it's actually super straightforward and it's pretty easy to understand. The hard part, I would say, is like implementing it consistently.
Yeah, when I was learning it, when I first heard about it, I was like, well, how is this helping me? But as soon as I got into it, I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. A lot of country players deal with Cage a lot. Rock players, not as much, but they still use it, at least in my experience.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That's good to know.
Cool. Last thing I want to cover with you guys, if you haven't gone through Major Scales 1 or 2, or Minor Scales is going to be coming out soon, Minor Scales 1, I'm working on that right now, it's just the 3-note per string method or system for navigating the fretboard. And the cool thing about the 3-note per string system is you only have to memorize 3 tiny little patterns to know everything. And that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it is true at the core of this thing. So if you've ever played a 3-note per string major scale, if you're anything like me, when you first saw that scale or learned it, I was looking at a book of scales probably about this thick. And I was like, there's no stinking way I'm ever going to memorize all these scales. Who does this, right? But what I didn't know is just the combinations of 3 little patterns just stuck together and started from different places and things like that. And if you look at this diagram, this graphic mat, this is a 3-note per string, 6-string root note G major scale. And if you look closely at that scale diagram, there are only 3 patterns in it. The first pattern occurs on the lowest strings, the E and A strings. And the pattern is just one fret in between each finger, right? Some people use this third finger right here. That's fine if you want to. But that, if you can memorize that, just get it under your fingers. That's your first step. Now, it just so happens in this particular scale shape that we're looking at here, the G major scale, 6-string root note, lowest root note right there, G major scale. And the next string, the A string, has the exact same pattern on it. Same thing, so you've learned one of the tiny little scale fragments that you need to master the 3-note method or system for navigating the fretboard. So that's the first one. Just think about that. Just recognize that that's one of the patterns that you need to get down. You can move that anywhere and play major scale, right? Or at least the first 6 notes of it. The next pattern for the 3-note per string system occurs on the D string. That's just your first, second, and fourth fingers. First and second fingers have no frets in between them, and then your second and fourth fingers have just one fret between them. So that's the second pattern that you need to learn to get down. And this is a lot of information, I know, but my goal here is to help you realize that, yeah, there's an overwhelming amount of scales out there to learn as far as 3-note per string system goes, but you can break it down into just 3 patterns. So that first pattern, and then on that D string, first, second, fourth, only skipping a fret between the second and fourth. Same thing on the next string over, uses pattern number 2. So that gives you a lot of that entire scale shape, just those 2 patterns. And if you practice this, if you want to tackle this, just don't worry about getting the whole scale shape down. Just work on those 2 patterns by themselves, or even on one string, and then spend some time going over the other one. And that brings us to the third one, which is kind of, I like to think of it as the inverse of the second one. On the high B and E strings, you're going to play 1, 3, 4. And you're going to skip a fret in between 1 and 3. That's the third main pattern. So let me finish this. And that's the same pattern on the next string too, the high E string. It uses pattern 3. And you just connect all 3 of those together. And every modal scale or major, minor, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, all the modes are going to be some combination of those 3 patterns. And once you realize that and start to see how they fit together in the order that they always come in, it's going to make navigating the fretboard with modal scales a lot easier for you. Now I'll show you this too. Last little concept here. I know this is a lot of information, but I want to kind of give everybody something that they can latch on to, right? If I had a 7-string guitar, just bear with me. If I had a lower string right here, below my low E, if I played that exact same shape below it, the one where I have a fret in between each finger, that would be every modal scale shape you could ever think of, or every combination you would have da da da. And then da da da. That big spread one, shape number 1. That'd be every combination of modal scales ever. And it would just be different according to where you started with the modal scale. So for example, this next modal scale up would be a Dorian scale. But all it is, it's the same 3 patterns just put together in a very predictable way. And that's all I want to go as far as modal scales right now. I just want you to realize that there are only 3 patterns in all diatonic modal scales as far as minor scales, natural minor scales, major scales, and all the modes. So that's the place to start if you want to get into the world of 3-note per string navigation for the fretboard.
And one more thing that I will mention is print out the PDF. I have these nice, beautiful pieces of paper. And it has all the graphics that came up on screen All of them are on here. So it's worth printing off just to have it even for reference. It has like a whole thing where you can see all the notes and all that kind of stuff. So if you guys can, print that off.
I know that's a lot, but I wanted to kind of open the door to the possibilities for you and encourage you that fretboard layout is a big topic, but if you take it in little bite-sized pieces, you can do a lot of damage or make a lot of progress in all of these topics, these main 4 areas of fretboard layout, and they all kind of interconnect too. So if you spend not a lot of time, if you spend some consistent time on it, you will get better a lot faster if you work on it kind of like this.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add, for those of you that were here last time, these octave centers, when I was talking about what I was playing when I was playing octaves, basically the same thing.
Yeah, exact same thing. Yeah. You don't have to use them in a lead guitar context. Good tool for rhythm guitar.
Great for rhythm too. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, was that was a lot of stuff.
It was really rapid fire, but I figured everybody needs to know the notes on the fretboard, and almost every guitar player I've ever met in my life puts it off or either ignores it to some degree.
That's me.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I know. It's bad. Okay, well then let's jump into questions. We've already got a bunch of questions in here. Guys, if you want questions answered, questions tab below, type it in, send it off, and then we'll get to it here. So let's see. I'm fried now, Greg says. Me too. Okay, let's go right from the beginning here. So the first question's from Katie, and I think she sent this question in twice. Now, it's a really long question, but I think I've broken it down. You have to let me know if this doesn't sound like your question, but basically she's asking how the inlays on the guitar are used and why they're placed where they're placed. I think a lot of people give it more thought than they need to.
I think so. I've heard a lot of theories about this, and I've never heard. I personally don't think I've ever heard a good one. The only one that really matters to me is this one, 12th fret.
12th fret.
Yeah, everything else, I believe, I could be 100% wrong about this, but I believe they're just put up to differentiate frets from the other. I mean, you're going to know where the first fret is, right? So typically there's not a fret marker there, but staggering it every other fret, and then once you get to the 12th fret, having something to differentiate that completely from all the other frets is a really good thing.
I think more than anything, like I know when I'm playing live and stuff like that, they're really just visual aids so that you can just see where you are. More than anything, they're not like laid out so that it's like musical. It's not a musical thing at all, right? In my mind.
No, like you could get rid of these altogether as long as you get good side ones. It's fine. Yeah,
absolutely. It's just there for reference. So if you need to play a C, you know, I can go up to my 8th fret on the E string, right, and find that easily. Yep. Even though there's no marker there, I just know because of where the other markers are exactly where that is. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. If we didn't answer your question, send in another question.
If it didn't have markers on it, it would be like the piano having one black key as C, and that would be kind of weird. That'd be hard to get around.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because C would be an open string or something on the guitar, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Actually, I like that. I'm going to use that. Great question, though. Let's move on to the next one from Alan G513. I'm currently watching Fretboard Layout 1. My question is, which method is best for thinking about the non-natural notes on the fretboard, for example, B flat or A sharp?
Both. I would say that you need to think about both, which kind of makes it twice as much work, but it's really good because if I'm in a sharp key, I'm going to need to know this is C sharp. If I'm in a flat key, I'm going to need to know that that's a D flat. So just do both. And a lot of times what I'll do is on the way up, I'll do sharps. On the way back down, I'll do flats.
Just to learn them.
Yeah, just to learn them. Or sometimes I'll say both. So I'll be like C sharp, D flat, D sharp, E flat. Right.
I know guitar players are notorious, and with a lot of musicians I play with and stuff, they hate it. Guitar players only speak in sharps. Have you heard that before?
100%. Yeah.
And I used to do that all the time, especially when I was playing a lot in church and you'd have different singers. So you'd be transposing into different keys, like the same song into a bunch of different keys all the time, depending on who was singing. And for me, it was just like everything would just be sharp. And I would just speak in sharps. And that doesn't matter if you're playing with like a bass player, but if you're playing with like a piano player, I know that screws with them big time.
Piano players generally don't like anything beyond A. As far as sharp keys, and they love keys like F major and B flat or E flat major because it's the same thing as playing like an A major or D major to them.
Right. Right, yeah. Anyways, it's best to learn both. That's what I took the time to just make sure that I knew both, and now I don't sound quite as dumb when I'm talking to other musicians. Okay, next question from Carrie. Oh, I like the way this is phrased. Oh, hate to ask such a basic question, but please explain natural notes. And I actually think that's a genius question.
No, it's good.
Because we didn't even talk about that.
Let's see. Sure. The natural musical alphabet is made up of the first 7 letters of the regular alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Natural musical alphabet. So those notes have no sharps and no flats. I know I haven't got there yet, but don't worry about that. So you have... what's the best place to start? Let's start on an A right here. Whole step from A is a B. Now, between B and C, just accept this for what it is. There's only a half step. A whole step from C is a D. Whole step from D is an E. Or when I say whole step, I mean 2 frets, right? And accept this again for what it is. There's only a half step between E and F. So from E to F is just 1 fret. F to G is a whole step or 2 frets. And from G to A is a whole step. That's all we're talking about when we're talking about natural notes. We're talking about unaltered or notes that don't have a little sharp sign, a tic-tac-toe sign, or a little flat sign that looks like a lowercase b next to them. And when you have a natural note, like that A right there, if you have a sharp next to it, that raises a natural note by 1/2 step or 1 fret. So an A sharp, from an A to an A sharp. And if you have that A natural and you see a flat sign beside it, or one of those little lowercase b looking signs, you just lower it by 1 fret or 1/2 step. Great. So I hope that answers your question.
That's perfect. Just want to let you guys know, we don't have a ton of time for more questions. So if you do want your question answered, make sure you submit it right now. Otherwise, we won't have time, basically. So on to the next one. I'm scared because this is from Matt, the guy sitting over there.
Oh, Lord.
I sold my left-handed Taylor 814 CE yesterday. Am I a fool for doing so? No, because you're left-handed. You got to learn to play right-handed.
If I sold my 814, I would feel like I just got kicked in the face, man. Oof. Oh, I love that guitar so much.
I did. There was a little bit of remorse there, but
yeah,
she's going to a better home.
Somebody that actually shows her attention, pays her attention.
In case you guys don't know, an 814, Taylor 814 is the guitar that the acoustic guitar Nate usually plays. It's a really nice acoustic guitar.
Matt had the same guitar, only left-handed and Sunburst.
Yeah, and you just sold it.
Yeah.
Sad day, sad day. But it was left-handed, so.
All the left-handed people revolt.
I know.
All you guys, you make fun of us for being left-handed.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. This is from Bean Jammin'. You had shown the ways to... Oh, this is actually a good question. You showed how to move the A, G, E, and D chords up and down the fretboard using a bar, but not the C.
Okay.
Do you want to show that quick?
Yeah, sure. Same exact idea. You're just going to treat this open C shape, let me get this off of here, as a bar chord. But to do that, nobody ever really wants to make this chord because it's really impractical. You have to make a C with those 3 fingers, and then you can move it anywhere you want. And the lowest, or the point of reference root note right here is the C on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. So that is going to give the chord, no matter where you move it, its name. So if you move this up a whole step, play it with these 3 fingers. That's a D, 1 whole step above the C. So we just come back here and make a bar there. And that's out of tune, I apologize. But that's the basic idea, from a C to a D, up another whole step to an E. And that's quite a stretch, especially if you're standing up and your guitar's a little lower. So a lot of times what will happen is I will not even worry about this pinky. And I'll just play that.
Yep.
Just leave it out. Let the bass, other guitar player, or a keyboard player cover that root note. So you can do the same thing with all those open chords. And those, learning how to move those particular 5 open chord shapes around are really fundamental to getting into other chords, extending chords like major 7 chords, 9th chords, 11 chords, and like Andrew was talking about earlier, making specific parts or chord melodies with specific melodies on top.
Yeah.
I won't get any further into that right now, but they're very like
Yes.
once you get this down, it opens a whole several new worlds of playing guitar for you.
For sure. I just noticed something in the chat here, and I just think it's a good tip. From Hemingway 35, he was talking about how saying the names of the notes and chords as he was playing them was a huge help when he started doing that, and I agree, it's a huge help. And then he was saying he has his wife called him out so that he doesn't know what's coming, and then doesn't have as much time to react and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a really good way to do it. I like that.
I have an idea for a product. I want a bag of like Scrabble pieces, but all they are all the major and minor keys.
Yeah.
And then intervals.
Yeah.
And there's 2 bags, and you just pull one out, and like, okay, B flat's my key for the day. I'm practicing B flat. Oh. Or if your friend is with you, they'll throw an interval at you, and you have to play it, or something like that. But I like that because I'm always picking. I have to sit down. Okay, what key am I working on today? Okay, C, whatever.
Yeah.
So copyright.
Copyright.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, you heard it here first. That's really funny.
Oh, if I actually did that, I'd probably just get one to remember.
Yeah. It's a cool idea, though. I really like that. All right, we got time for a few more.
Cool.
G-Beans. He's asking questions. G-Beans. What would you say is the best way to apply this to rhythm playing for a beginner? Should I focus on bar chords at first, or is there something else that is more important?
Yeah, I would start out by just getting your E and A bar chord shapes down. In the context of the C, F, G progression that we were talking about earlier, I would start by getting that A-shaped C chord, and then the E-shaped F chord, the E-shaped G chord. And if you can't play those, it's a really great opportunity to work on getting your bar chords down, memorizing the notes on the low E and A strings, that F, that G, and that C, and getting used to visualizing these open chords, like that E, as other chords that they can be using those shapes. So yeah, I would definitely do that. The next step from there would probably be to add that D chord in. There's a G shape, C. So it's all the same concept as learning your bar chords. You're just using different combinations of open chord shapes. But yeah, the E and A bar chord shapes are probably the best place to start if you already know your open chords.
Nice. Sometimes when you play stuff and talk at the same time, it's like very soothing. I don't know, it's a weird thing to say, but I noticed Nate was playing some stuff and it's like, it almost sounds like radio.
It's probably because I'm concentrating so hard that I slow down.
Yeah, and you're playing like pretty chords there. I don't know. Just noticed that.
There's some delay on here. Hypnotized.
Oh no. You gotta stay on topic, Nate. Okay, next one. I think this one's a little bit off topic, but still a great question. This one's from Matthew SoCal. I'm having a hard time getting my hand to go right to the chord I wish to play. It affects my transitions and it's driving me nuts. Besides, keep practicing. Do you have any exercises that will help with this? Currently, D flat to G to C. D flat to G to C is giving me fits at half and quarter note transitions. D flat, does it even occur naturally in a key with G and C?
Nope.
So maybe, are you thinking D minor? Maybe?
That's a non-diatonic chord that I could see being used with those though. Maybe he's doing G flat to G to C. It doesn't matter what the chords are. What matters is that you know the individual chord shapes that you're trying to switch between very well before even trying to switch between them. So let's just say it's this D flat. If you can't go to that chord right away, then you're gonna have a hard time switching between that chord and that C or G or whatever it is. So step number 1, make sure to get that first chord down to where you can play just perfectly and go right to it.
He did say D minor.
D minor, okay.
D minor. I'm guessing it's open chords.
Actually, that's a change that if I don't keep it polished, D minor, that particular D minor, because I don't use it much, can be hard for me. I'm surprised I actually hit that. So you need to get that D minor down to where you can go to it by itself on its own.
Yeah.
Same thing with the other two chords. And then what you can, isolate just 2 changes. Just the D to whatever chord is next in the progression. And don't do this to a metronome. Don't do it to the track you're trying to play to. Just work on that change really deliberately. And then once you can do that, then maybe kick in a metronome. Just to force yourself to stay in time and make that change. And then once you get to that level, try playing along with the jam track.
Short and frequent practice sessions.
Yep.
If you're doing like a few hours every few days, and if you can do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, and just do that every single day, you'll actually notice a massive difference.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we've talked about that before. It like gets ingrained in your long-term memory instead of your short-term memory, and it makes a massive difference. Even 10 minutes, honestly.
Even if you have 3 minutes between doing one thing and doing another, something in the oven and you're waiting to check on it, right? Pick your guitar up.
Yeah, exactly. One thing here I just want to touch on because I'm seeing it in chat and it didn't come through in the questions. Haley S. is asking about, she has small hands, so she's having trouble making chords, and then she's saying her guitar is really big because her uncle had big hands and it's from him. One thing that I'll just mention is pretty much all sizes of guitar are actually made for people with all hand sizes. Just about every single one, right? The differences in like fretboard radius and nut width and neck size aren't huge. But you have probably a few tips, do you think, for small hands?
Yeah, try to get your guitar up a little higher.
Yeah.
So you can come right up instead of watch what happens when my guitar goes down, my wrist kinks to get a better angle of attack. If it's here, it's going to be way easier to see what you're doing, but mostly it's going to be way easier to get a good angle of attack to where you don't have to kink your wrist one way or the other and just be able to get access to the fretboard to make those chords. The only thing I can think of exception to that would be if you're a tiny child and you have a giant, like a full-size classical,
That would
where
be
the
the only
fretboard's
thing,
wider.
yeah.
Even then, it's still doable. So
Yeah, I learned, started learning when I was 8 or so, and I was really small. I was always a small kid, and I started on a full-size guitar. And it was a little bit tough at first, but it should be no problem. The biggest thing is build strength and dexterity and flexibility. Work on that.
yeah, and get a strap to hold your guitar up if you need to, or use classical method for playing to bring that up higher.
Yeah. Okay, we got a few. I always say a few more.
Few.
They keep coming in, and then okay. From Cliff, Nate, most of what you were doing with scales tonight, you did with hammer-ons and pull-offs.
Mostly, yeah, just because it's safer. I'm not gonna lie. There's less of a chance of me missing it up.
Yeah.
That was all picked, but yeah, I would say 70%.
The use of legato versus like alternate picking or hybrid picking or whatever, like it's so subjective and stylized, I find, right? You got to kind of find what you like the sound of and what works for you.
I probably like both equally. I really like the aggressiveness of alternate picking because a lot of the music I listen to uses that. But I love, like, Brett Garza is my favorite electric player, and he is just probably 80% legato, I would say, maybe even more than that.
Okay, I'm moving through these quickly. I'm sorry. Gerardus, I'm using 11 gauge strings on a Les Paul guitar. Should I have my nut replaced? I never changed the original one, and my B string doesn't keep in tune if I do a whole step bending.
I would.
Yeah?
I would maybe not replaced, maybe get it cut for that gauge of strings if you know you're going to stick with them. Because typically if you put, especially on a Gibson, because the strings go out, they get bound in the nut anyways, and that causes tuning problems. So if you put thicker strings in there, they're just going to bind up more. I just had this guitar. It's going to be a promo for next week's lesson, if you don't mind. This guitar comes set up with 9s. PRS guitars come with 9s. I had 10s on it, and I got Steve Brand, the guy that's coming out next week, to do guitar setup basics for our live lesson. So you should all come out to that one. If you have any questions about basic guitar setup, which this is kind of pertains to. But all he did is he stuck a nut file in there and widened it just a little bit so the thicker strings didn't get caught in the nut. And I would definitely do that if there's somebody around that's trustworthy and you have the money for it, for sure.
Yeah. Do Les Pauls come typically set up with 9s, or do they do 10s? I think it's 9s.
I don't know.
I think it's 9s. And if that's the case, if you're going up 2 sizes, you definitely should.
Yeah.
for me, my guitar, I usually have 12s. I haven't had enough time to practice, so I've switched back to 11s. And this guitar was set up for 10s, and the 11s, they don't bind at all. And I've never filed my nut down. The 12s would.
The 12s probably ground it out a little bit, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's a fair point too. Yeah. That's a fair point. But I rarely have tuning issues. So if you're going to stick with 11s for a long time, I would say take it, and unless you know what you're doing, be very careful with a nut file. You will ruin your nut real quick.
That's something that I won't do on the guitar. Like if it's an emergency, what I'll do is if I have to put 11s on this guitar tomorrow, I would take the 11 strings and just slide them back and forth a while.
Oh, yeah.
That works too.
Yeah, that works for sure.
It's not ideal.
And you can put a little bit of pencil. You use a mechanical pencil, put that in there, and then it'll help them slide too. Anyways. All right, next one from Les Acadians, Vincent. I'm sorry, I probably mispronounce your name every time. Hi guys, I noticed some are asking for lessons on acoustic. I practice both acoustic and electric. Is this good, or should I stick with one or the other?
I do both all the time.
Yeah.
To me, it's just a matter of
preference.
what I'm into at the moment and what I'm teaching at the moment. But if I wasn't doing guitarlessons.com and any of that, it would just be a matter of what I was into at the moment. And a lot of times I'll do the legato portion of my practice routine on acoustic.
Yeah.
And that helps strengthen my hand, and then I'll go to the picked portion of my daily routine or whatever with electric, so I can keep a lighter touch on the guitar.
Nice. Okay. 3 more questions, and then we have to be done. So,
just a few.
A few's, it's like a subjective term. Anyways. Another one from Katie. Is it possible to create videos on spider exercises?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I'll leave it at that, but we can, I guess we could include that maybe in Guitar Chops in that series of series.
Okay.
Because I don't do a lot of them. Like the only...
No, me either.
The only one I ever really do is that one, the one where you do that, and then switch fingers. Or...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Those types of things.
I'm very bad at them.
I find that those are great for a while, but as soon as you've built the initial coordination, it's good to maybe bust them out once every few months. But as soon as you've built the initial coordination, it's great to just go and work on a song or write a song that uses those kind of coordinations in a musical context too. So that's the same with every chops exercise too, though.
Yeah. Cool. Next one from Jim Baker Sr. Does owning or playing a 7-string guitar make sense?
Depends what kind of music you're into. I want one right now.
Do you?
Yeah. There's a couple. I either want a Kiesel or a Strandberg.
Kiesel ones are nice.
Yeah. One of those two.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. If you're into heavy music or not even heavy music with just extended range stuff. 100%
Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff out there now with 8 and 9-string guitars.
Yeah. I will say this: it would not make sense for me to show up to a country gig or a church gig with a 7-string guitar.
No.
But I would still love to own one. And like typically the tone you're gonna get out of those wouldn't be great for that kind of stuff anyway. So
yeah, usually I think a lot of those 7 strings are designed for metal.
Yeah.
Most of them.
The gent.
Okay. This is the last question. This is from D. Tagle. Is it bad technique to use the pinky finger instead of the ring finger for traditional chord notes that you would use the ring finger?
I'm gonna need an example of this. To use the pinky?
Like a C?
See, like this. It depends. I don't think so, but I think it depends on what your reasoning is behind it. Like if you have a problem with your third finger, where it can't quite reach, then sure, go ahead, do whatever it takes to make it happen, right? I had a friend with the opposite problem. He could not. Anytime he tried to put his pinky down, it would just lock up because he had some kind of structural traumatic injury earlier on in life. So he would substitute his third finger, right? So if it makes sense for you, then go ahead and do it. If you're doing it just out of comfort or just because you like it better, sure, I guess that's a better reason. Now, the only thing I would say, you might run into some weird problems with extended chord extensions, sus chords, things like that, where you run into some challenges as far as how to finger those. So just be aware of that as you progress. It might be worth it to learn it both ways. So for example, this might not be at all what you're talking about. The C chord, if you're making it like this, it might be worth it to just learn it both ways. Just so if you come across a strange situation where you have to alter that chord or put an extension on it, you're not kind of behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's going to be it.
Okay.
I will just let you guys know next week we are doing the same time, so 4 o'clock Pacific on, what would that day be? 14th? 14th. And that's basic guitar setup, and that's going to be with Steve Brand.
Yep.
And he's just a genius when it comes to setting up guitars. So you're talking about like strings, setting up bridges, setting up action, intonation, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Is that the idea?
what all is involved in a setup, number one. And then the basic fundamental points of setting up an acoustic and an electric. And then we're going to open it for questions because I know you guys are going to have tons of those.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be a good one. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, guys, thank you, everybody who came out. Thank you for all the awesome questions. And we will see you guys next week.